Let me set the scene for you. It's 1998. A man is sleeping in his car in Atlanta, Georgia. Not because he's passing through, not because he made a bad weekend decision, because he has nowhere else to go. He has written a play. He has poured everything he has into getting people to see it. And almost nobody came. He loses his apartment. He bounces between shelters in the back seat of his car. This goes on for years. And at some point in the middle of all of that, most people would have made the rational decision to quit, to go find a regular job, to let the dream die quietly and move on with life. He didn't quit. And about 5 years later, that same man is sitting on a deal that will eventually make him a billionaire. Not a millionaire, a billionaire. One of the very few black billionaires on the planet. A man who owns his own studio, his own film distribution deals, his own production empire. A man who one day will turn down a deal from Netflix, not because he's difficult, but because he understood something about ownership that most people never figure out until it's too late. His name is Tyler Perry, and his story is not just inspiring, it is a financial education hiding inside a life. That's what this video is really about. Not just the comeback, not the fame, not the movies. We're going to break down, step by step, how Tyler Perry actually built wealth, what he did with money that most people don't do, what he risked, what it cost him, and what the underlying principles of his journey look like at a scale that any person watching this, whether you're an electrician clocking out at 6, a nurse running your third double shift this week, a freelancer staring at an empty invoice list, can actually use. Because the specific circumstances of Tyler Perry's life are his. But the financial moves underneath them, those belong to everybody. Let's go back to the beginning. Emmett Perry Jr. was born in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1969. And the word, difficult, doesn't really cover it. His father was physically abusive, severely and repeatedly. The home he grew up in was not a safe one. He changed his name to Tyler as a young man, partly as an act of separation from a man who had hurt him deeply. He dropped out of high school. He attempted suicide twice before the age of 25. He spent time homeless as a teenager. There was no inheritance coming, no family safety net, no connections, no network of people who were going to open doors for him. What he had was a deep need to process pain, and at some point, he found a way to do that through writing. He watched an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show where someone talked about the therapeutic power of writing down your experiences. And so he wrote. He wrote letters to himself. And then he started turning those letters into something else. A stage play. A story about a woman named Madea. A tough, sharp-tongued, larger-than-life grandmother figure who was partly inspired by his own mother and the women he knew growing up. Madea said things that felt true. Madea handled people in ways that felt satisfying. And more than that, Madea represented a world, black Southern culture, church, family, struggle, humor, that almost never got to take center stage in mainstream entertainment. He saved up $1,000. He rented a small black theater in Atlanta. He printed flyers. He spread the word. He was certain that people would come. 200 people showed up. He needed 1,900 to break even. He lost everything. And then he did it again, and lost again, and again. For 6 years, Tyler Perry cycled through this. Writing, producing, promoting, watching the audience trickle in and the money drain out. Living in his car, staying in shelters when he could get a bed, doing odd jobs when he had to. Now here is the first financial lesson, and it's buried in what sounds like pure failure. When Tyler Perry was sleeping in his car, he was still investing. Not in stocks, not in property. He was investing in a skill, a product, and an audience. Every dollar he scraped together went back into the play. Every performance, even the ones nobody came to, was a rehearsal. Every flyer handed out was market research. He was learning what worked, what resonated, what made people laugh and cry and feel seen. While most people around him would have called what he was doing a waste of time and money. The lesson here is not, struggle is good. The lesson is this: there is a difference between money spent and money invested. And sometimes the thing you're investing in is not a financial product. It is a skill. It is a product. It is an audience. The nurse who spends her evenings studying for an extra certification isn't wasting time. The welder who keeps practicing new techniques on weekends isn't losing those hours. The investment is happening. It just doesn't pay out immediately. The payoff for Tyler Perry came in 2000. He put on a show at the House of Blues in Atlanta. And something was different. Word had gotten around in the black church community. The gospel music in his plays, the themes of faith and family and forgiveness. It connected. The house was full. Then the next show was full. Then people started coming back and bringing their mothers and their cousins and their co-workers. And now here is where Tyler Perry did something that most people, even people who figure out how to start generating income, completely fail to do. He did not celebrate and relax. He looked at what was working and he doubled down on the thing that was already moving. He built a touring production company. He took the show on the road. And he discovered something enormous. There was a massive, underserved audience of black church-going Americans who were hungry for entertainment that reflected their lives, their humor, their faith, their family dynamics. And almost no one in mainstream entertainment was speaking to them. Not because the audience was small, because the entertainment industry had convinced itself the audience wasn't worth chasing. Tyler Perry knew the audience existed because he was from it. And that is a principle that goes far beyond show business. The person who actually understands an underserved market, not from a spreadsheet, but from lived experience, has an advantage that no MBA program can replicate. The accountant who grew up in a community with no access to financial advice and decides to serve that community is not starting a small business. They are staking a claim in an uncontested space. The mechanic who figures out that immigrant communities in their city are being overcharged by shops that don't speak their language is not just being kind. They are finding a market. Lived experience is market intelligence. Most people don't think of it that way. But it is. So Tyler Perry is now generating real revenue from live theater. He's touring. The shows are selling out. And this is the point where the financial picture starts to get genuinely interesting. He did not hand his money to someone else to manage. He reinvested almost everything back into the business. Better productions, better venues, more cities. He was building what business people call a feedback loop. Money in, better product, bigger audience, more money in. But more importantly, he kept the business lean. He did not build expensive infrastructure he couldn't afford. He didn't hire a huge team before he needed one. He built slowly and deliberately. And then he made a move that was either genius or crazy. And in the moment, a reasonable person could have argued both. He decided to record his live stage shows and sell the DVDs directly to his audience. This was not a distribution deal. This was not a record label. This was not a studio contract. He filmed the shows himself, packaged the DVDs himself, and sold them at the shows and through his growing mailing list. Think about what this means financially. He cut out every middleman. Every dollar his audience spent came back to him. No distributor taking a percentage. No label claiming ownership of the content. He owned the product. He owned the customer relationship. He owned the revenue. He sold hundreds of thousands of DVDs directly to people who wanted them. And this right here, is one of the most important financial moves in the entire story. And it has nothing to do with being a celebrity. Ownership of your output is one of the most powerful financial positions you can be in. A photographer who shoots for an agency earns a fee. A photographer who owns the rights to their own images earns that fee plus every future licensing deal. A graphic designer who creates on spec for a client gets paid once. A graphic designer who builds their own template library sells the same work thousands of times. The thing you make once and sell repeatedly is a completely different financial animal than the thing you make once and get paid once for. Tyler Perry figured this out before he was famous, while he was still doing this in relative obscurity. And it is the financial principle that eventually helped him build an empire. Because what happened next is that Hollywood came knocking. Lionsgate approached him about turning his plays into films. And now we get to watch Tyler Perry do something that most people in his position would not have done. He negotiated from a position of leverage. He already had an audience. He already had proven demand. He already had content that people were paying for. He was not a desperate unknown walking into a meeting hoping someone would give him a chance. He was a man bringing a built-in audience to the table and asking what that was worth. The first film, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, came out in 2005 and opened #1 at the box office. It cost about $5.5 million to make and grossed nearly $50 million at the box office. Madea Goes to Jail made $63 million domestically. Meet the Browns, Why Did I Get Married?, The Family That Prays. One after another, Tyler Perry was producing films that Hollywood had not believed in, for audiences Hollywood had not prioritized. And now, here is where it gets interesting. Because most people in Tyler Perry's position, most people who finally broke through after years of struggle, who finally have money coming in, who finally have Hollywood deals, most people at this point start enjoying the fruits. Start spending, start living the life they told themselves they'd live once they made it. Tyler Perry used his leverage to negotiate something that most people in the entertainment industry don't get: creative control and a significant ownership stake in his work. He did not just want to be paid. He wanted to own what he built. And then he did something that people thought was genuinely insane at the time. He decided to build his own studio. Tyler Perry Studios opened in 2019 on a 330-acre lot in Atlanta that was once a Confederate Army base. And the symbolism of that is not lost on anyone paying attention. It is the largest film studio in the United States, one of the largest in the world. 12 sound stages, its own streets, its own water tower, a facility that he owns completely. And here is the financial logic of that decision, stripped of all the spectacle. When you rent the space you work in, you pay forever. When you own the space you work in, you build equity. And when the space you work in is also something other people need to rent, because other productions, other studios, other filmmakers need that facility, your workspace becomes a revenue-generating asset that works even when you are not working. Tyler Perry Studios generates income through his own productions, yes. But it also rents out to other productions. Netflix productions, Amazon productions, major network shows. His space earns money while he sleeps. That is the transition from earning to owning. And it is one of the most significant financial leaps any person can make. The nurse who earns a salary is trading time for money. The nurse who earns a salary and also owns a small rental property is trading time for money and also collecting income while they sleep. The software developer who codes for a company earns a wage. The software developer who codes for a company and also sells a software tool they built on their own time is earning in two places from two different kinds of work. owning something that generates income independent of your direct effort is not a privilege reserved for the wealthy. It is a principle that scales down to almost any starting point. The question is when you start building toward it, not whether you can. Now, and I want to be honest about this, Tyler Perry's path was not without serious criticism, and some of it is financial in nature. The volume of his output, the rate at which he produced content, led to a reputation for work that felt rushed. Critics argued that the quality suffered, that the speed at which he made movies meant that sometimes the writing was thin, the production was hasty, the depth wasn't there. And this is a real tension that anyone building something quickly will face. You can scale fast and risk quality, or you can slow down and risk losing momentum or market position. Neither answer is obviously right, but the cost of getting it wrong, in reputation, in audience trust, in the long-term value of your brand, is real. He also faced significant public criticism for the working conditions on some of his productions. Actors and crew members raised concerns about long hours and difficult conditions. And while the business logic of running a lean, high-volume operation is clear, there is a longer-term calculation about how you treat the people who help you build what you're building. Your reputation as someone people want to work with is a financial asset. Lose it, and it costs you in ways that don't always show up immediately, but always show up eventually. These are lessons too, and they matter. Because building wealth is not just about the right moves. It's about understanding the full cost, financial, human, reputational, of the moves you make, and being honest with yourself about what you're willing to carry. Then came the Netflix decision, and this one is worth sitting with. In 2019, Tyler Perry had built a distribution relationship with Viacom BET. He turned down a deal with Netflix, not because Netflix wasn't offering good money, they were. He turned it down because of what the deal would have required him to give up. Control, ownership. The terms, by his account, didn't work for him. And this is a moment that divides opinion. Some people looked at the Netflix money and thought he was leaving an enormous opportunity on the table. Others looked at what Netflix typically requires in terms of intellectual property rights and understood exactly why a man who had fought his entire career to own what he built would not hand it over now. There is no universally right answer here, but there is a question worth asking. For Tyler Perry, and for anyone watching, at what point does the size of the check stop being the most important thing? At what point is what you're giving up worth more than what you're getting? Most people never have to make that decision at that scale. But versions of it come up everywhere. The job offer that pays more, but means giving up something else. The client who wants to pay well, but own everything you make for them. The partnership that looks great on paper, but costs you the ability to make your own decisions. The question of what ownership is worth, what control is worth, is not a question for billionaires. It is a question for anybody building anything. So let's bring this all together, because Tyler Perry's story, underneath all the specifics, is really a series of principles that don't require fame, don't require Hollywood, and don't require any particular head start. The first principle: invest in a skill before you invest in anything else. Tyler Perry spent years building something before he earned from it. The return on a skill compounds over decades in ways that almost nothing else can match. If you are a steel fabricator who becomes the best steel fabricator in your city, you do not just earn more. You become someone who cannot be easily replaced. And someone who cannot be easily replaced has negotiating power. That is a financial asset. The second principle: find the underserved audience. Tyler Perry did not compete for the same audience that Hollywood was chasing. He found a massive group of people who were not being spoken to and spoke to them directly. In any field, in any industry, in any neighborhood, there are needs that are not being met. The person who spots them early and meets them honestly is not just doing a good service. They are building a sustainable income position in a space where the competition is low and the loyalty is high. The third principle: own your output wherever you can. Not every situation allows for full ownership, but the direction you move in matters. Moving toward owning more of what you produce, the templates, the processes, the intellectual property, the tools, the space, is moving toward a financial position that earns beyond the hours you put in. The fourth principle: negotiate from proof, not from hope. Tyler Perry did not walk into Hollywood asking for a chance. He walked in with evidence, proof that audiences wanted what he made. The strongest position you can be in, whether you're asking for a raise, pitching a business idea, or walking into a meeting with a new client, is when you can show, not tell. Build the evidence before you need it. The fifth principle: understand the difference between income and assets. Income pays your bills. Assets build your future. Tyler Perry used income from tours and films to build assets: the studio, the content library, the brand. Every time he earned money, he was thinking about what that money could become, not just what it could buy. And the sixth principle, and this one is the one most people skip: the move toward ownership is not a one-time event. It is a direction. You do not wake up one day and decide to be an owner. You make a series of decisions over years that move you toward owning more of your time, your output, your income stream. It starts small, it starts imperfectly, but it starts. Tyler Perry slept in his car. He is now a billionaire who owns a studio that sits on land that once served a very different kind of American power. That journey did not happen in a moment. It happened in a direction. And the question, the one I want to leave you with, is not, can I do what Tyler Perry did? Because you probably can't. His life is his life. His gifts are his gifts. His specific path is not your path. The question is, what direction are you moving in? Are you getting better at something that compounds? Are you looking for needs in your world that aren't being met? Are you moving, even slowly, even just slightly, toward owning more of what you produce? Are you building proof instead of just hoping for a chance? Are you thinking about the difference between what you earn and what you're building with it? You do not need Tyler Perry's story to be your story. You just need a direction. And then you need to keep walking in it, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody shows up, even when the car is where you're sleeping. Because the people who build something real are almost never the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who kept building anyway. If this kind of thinking is what you want more of, stories that don't just entertain you, but actually give you something to work with, then subscribe. Not because you have to, but because we do this every week. A real person, a real story, a real breakdown of what worked and what didn't and what it means for you, wherever you're sitting right now. The next one is already coming, and I think you're going to want to be here for it.